Hello, Internet. Welcome here. We're glad for you. When I was in South Africa, this is beginning to sound like Rhodesians. We used to call them the when we were in Rhodesia. And just a joke. But when I was in South Africa earlier this year, we went to a farm in the Kalahari. And we recorded quite a few people, the videos. Some of you have seen, a lot of them you will still have to see in the future. But we were not alone. There were actually people there from KwaZulu-Natal government, specifically in the form of Reinhard Hartzenberg. And they've got a wonderful program going where they record people of all colors, all tribes, all everything, where they don't discriminate at all. And then these people tell them their story. And then it goes into an archive for future historians to use, or people who want to see it. And we were very grateful for Reinhard there because he's an expert cameraman, sound man, got fantastic equipment, of course. And he was kind enough to take me and Papa Whiskey, that is Peter Williams, as well as Peter McRae and myself. He was kind enough to drive us all the way from Durban to the Kalahari Desert, which you can think is quite a trip. And we had a lot of fun on the way. And so while Andrew and myself was recording some people, Reinhard was recording as well. And now they've kindly gave us access to their recordings. And this is what this coming video is about. Now, it might be in Afrikaans, it might be in English, but it's very well done. Some of them you might have seen before on Legacy, where we made double interviews. But, no interview is ever the same. Conversation is always different because there's some different aspects. So yeah, here we are. Have a look. And then in the description, I will leave a link to this remarkable place where you can go and look at many, many thousands of other recordings as well and see if you can support these people. We're always anti-government. Whatever they do, we say is nonsense, and mostly that's true. But here's one of the efforts which I think praiseworthy and should be continued.
Good morning, my name is Peter Williams. It's the 29th of March 2023 and we're still in the Kalahari and we are interviewing Mark Lehmann today. Mark was one of those national servicemen who was an operational medic and he joined one Southwest African Reconnaissance Regiment when that unit took over Meershoop. Morning Mark, how are you keeping?
Morning Peter, I'm fine.
Lovely. Just tell us quickly your background and how you got into the army and where you went to.
Yeah, born and bred in Cape Town. Did my high school in Paul Rist Gymnasium from 81 to 85. Was called up to do my national service for 2 years. Got called up to Sam's College and did my basic training in Klipdrift, Potchefstroom. From there we were volunteered to do the Ops Medic course. We were all taken up to Sam's College for Trikkehoogte, where we completed our Ops Medic course and then we were flown up to the border and allocated to various bases.
Okay, good. So which base were you allocated
So
to?
I was allocated to, when I landed in Ondangwa, there were a friend of mine, Harold Knipe, and myself put our names down to be at the base together. And then we went to the holding tents, and when we came back the next day, somebody had scratched out our names and put their names in, and we were the last two ops medics with unallocated bases. So they sent him to Okatopi, which is just south of Oshakati. And I couldn't say Okatopi at that stage, so they sent me to Meershoop.
Okay.
So
And the whole theme with all these videos that we've done from the Kalahari is there's one common theme with it all, and Mark said the magic word. And the magic word here is volunteer. Because a volunteer is a certain type of a person. If you volunteer for something and you don't know what it is, and you volunteer just because you want to give or you want to help out, those are the kind of people that end up in very special units and do very special things. So I think you didn't even realize then where you were going to and what you were going to do. Meersoop was a very small little base, and it was very close to Omatia, which was the 6-1 mechanized base, and it was just north of Oshivela, which was the main operational military base for all personnel coming from South Africa, and then they spent at least a month there doing coin operations and getting orientated, and at the same time getting used to the weather and the circumstances that are Southwest Africa. Because the weather is extremely hot and humid, and it is quite taxing on the guys. So what unit was the custodian of Meersoop at that time?
Well, when I arrived at Meersoop, it was 101 Romeo Mike.
Yes.
That was at Meersoop, and they were in the process of demobilizing. Yes. And obviously making way for 1 SWAR Reconnaissance Regiment. And so that's what the first month that I was there, they were demobilizing. There was a doctor on base. Mm-hmm. He was actually ending his 2-year stint and returning home to get married. So his priority at that stage was getting a good tan for his wedding. And really 2 weeks after I arrived at Meersoop, 2 to 3 weeks, the doctor demobilized. 101 Romeo Mike went up to Oshakati or Wanandangwa, and then there was a small little period where maybe there were 2 or 3 of us left in the base, and then 1 SWAR Reconnaissance Regiment arrived, and yourself, obviously.
Okay, just tell us quickly about Meersoop. How big is it dimensionally?
Oh, Meersoop is a base made out of 4 walls with a water tower in the center. I would guess, 300 meters by 300 meters by 300 meters by 300 meters, I suppose. So, square, yeah.
So it's a very, very small base. Let's just fill in where 1 Southwest African Reconnaissance come from. On the 1st of April 1984, 32 Battalion had the base called Amahoni, and it was the reconnaissance wing base. And the officer commanding, Colonel Eddie Viljoen, decided to disband his reconnaissance wing and split those people up 2 per company. And the people that were in the reconnaissance wing were given the option of going over to 1 Southwest African Reconnaissance. And the officer commanding was Willie Snyders, also known as Willem Wambo. Obviously, those people that stayed behind joined 1 Southwest African Reconnaissance. The operators had to do the South African Special Forces cycle, which they did, and from there they started operating. Amahoni base was unfortunately very far from any other bases, so we moved our headquarters to Rundu initially, and then we moved all the way south of the Toshapan to a place called Omaruru, and we took over a mine called Kransberg Mine. And it was very idyllic, but we couldn't shoot in that area because there were a lot of game farms, and that would have perturbed the farmers in the area. So we needed a small springboard operational base, which we could use as a tactical headquarters, and Meersoop was negotiated with 101 Romeo Mikes because it was just a staging base for them. We then moved into that base, and we started our operations from there into Angola and wherever else we went to. So this was very important operational base. And it wasn't like Amahoni, where we had a base commander and chefs and everything else. It was a skeleton staff. I think there were 6 staff members there when we got there, which we augmented with a few more guys. But basically, believe it or not, the ops medic was like the base commander. And his job was both to look after civilians that came in, and they came in hordes to see the medic and get some pills and attend to anything from giving birth to having a headache. And so it was a very intricate part of the whole system. and we also stayed very close to 61 Meg, and we had to stay friends with them. In 86 there was an incident that occurred. Just tell us about the incident outside the base when we bumped into some of 61 Meg guys.
Oh, there was a small teams operation. If I recall, it was four-man team. It was a night exercise, and we were with this specific incident. We were walking, I think, from kraal to kraal, and basically stopping outside the kraals and then listening what the discussion was around the fire. I think our biggest challenge there were dogs, giving our positions away and etc. But this is what we were doing, from one evening from while we were walking from one kraal to the following kraal, the four of us, and we were dressed clandestinely without any SADF gear, which in Meershoop we had a semi-underground bunker, and all the camouflage from caches and captives and etc. was put in there with weaponry and everything, and that was used by all of us for clothing and arms. And we walked into a structured 61 Meg ambush with two stopper groups and the main formation, and we clearly walked through the one stopper group into the Doodsakker and the killing zone, and obviously as soon as we got into the killing zone, the officer or lieutenant, he gave the instruction for them to open fire, and all hell broke loose. Obviously we hit the earth and dirt as fast as possible. Nobody needed to give us an instruction to do that, and tried to find the closest piece of obstacle to find cover behind. I remember vividly there was a few things that went through my mind during this, and obviously the drills were natural, but I remembered I was 19 years old. I had not driven a Porsche or a sports vehicle yet at that stage, and I realized that was something that I needed to do in my life before the stars were put out, and I also had not taken a woman to bed yet, so at that time we'll get to the next incident about collecting girlfriends later, but it was vivid in my mind, and then I mean it was seconds or split seconds that you're thinking that, and then obviously firing back, and the challenge was it was only four of us firing back, so I recall firing and immediately you give your position away because they see the flashes, and then everyone's concentrating on your area where your flashes are. And it was horrific being on the other side of a South African Defence Force planned ambush. Then we recall, I recall the officer or whoever it was in Afrikaans giving a flanking instruction of sorts, and we started shouting back at each other in Afrikaans, and then the officer, it was start fire from their side, which took a while to stop.
Let me just interrupt you. Start fire is cease fire for everyone to stop firing.
Sorry, I'm speaking in the language that was given then, and we started shouting back, and eventually he gave the ceasefire, and a number of times, and the machine gun chatter stopped. And then we started shouting at each other because we couldn't see anything, and there was just a dust cloud and smoke cloud, haze, and it was interesting because they asked us, okay, where are you coming from? And we said the Western Cape, and then they asked us who were the rugby team of the Western Cape, and we said Western Province, and then we asked them, who are you in North Transvaal, and or wherever, and the Blue Bulls were the team. So it was interesting that we were using the rugby teams to identify each other very quickly, And then one of us had to move out of position, and obviously it was us, and we slowly exfilled from the area and got back to the base the following day. And then the following day there was quite a large inquiry because it was a blue on blue incident, and everyone went back to the
reenact.
Went back to go look at where everybody was, and it was interesting. Where we were, there was no bush left. It was just the trees were cut to stumps. It was there was absolutely nothing left. It was almost it almost reminded me of the pictures of Delville Wood where there was nothing left, and nobody could believe that nobody got injured, and that was the most amazing thing of all, So there was clearly something.
Yeah, so that operation's name was called Divine Intervention, and it was by the grace of the hand of the Lord that these guys were saved on both sides, because I think although they were only 4, I think they were used to shooting a lot more, practicing and shooting than the 6-1 Meg guys. And fortunately the 6-1 Meg was a new group that had come in, and they were also just practicing their drills in the area. The reason for doing these small 4-man operations was basically to test your prowess at being able to move in and out of the enemy and the local population. And the most dangerous warning sign during such operations is obviously dogs. So the team has probably had dog whistles with them. And if you use the same area over and over and you use the same tone of whistle, the dogs will actually be inquisitive, come and have a look. And we used to normally give them a little bit of dry horse, which is a jerky, and then they would eat it, and then they would get used to you. And that way you could be able to infiltrate within the local population and not being picked up. The reason why we went to local population was because SWAPO, the Southwest Africans People Organization that infiltrated from Angola into Southwest Africa, would often use the local population for food, for information, for water, to rest up and to sleep. So it was important, especially at night, because the SWAPO would arrive, work at night, they would arrive at night, they would eat, they would sleep and leave before the morning. So if you did eavesdrops on these conversations, obviously, if it had anything to do with military, you could easily pick it up. And if you knew how many people were in the kraal, then you'd also realize that there shouldn't be that many people. So these are the kind of reasons why such operations were done. However, it should have been cleared with higher headquarters that you were in the area, and then they would make it a frozen area where everyone knew that something was happening in the area. And frozen areas were used between different South African forces, but as well as special operations like this where you could not be identified because you'd be wearing enemy uniforms, acting like the enemy, and you could be easily misconstrued as the actual enemy. Tell us a little bit more about your other tasks that you had to do besides the medical tasks. That were ad hoc tasks that we would spring on you.
Yeah, well, let's address it.
Sure.
From a medical aspect, there was the task that we just discussed. Then there was obviously holding the sick bay in the base for any incidents in the base, or external. And then also we had, as you said earlier, we had a tent outside the base, which was for the local population, or plaaslike bevolking, PB tent, which we used to call. And that tent was a medical tent where I had 2 or 3 Uvambu assistants that could also translate for me. And most initially in the morning from say 9 o'clock till 12 o'clock or 11 o'clock, we would see the local populace that would come from all around, and we would. And then we would treat them and dispense whatever medication they required and etc. So we did that as well. Also from a medical point, on that road, the single tar road from Oshavelu all the way up to Ondangwa and Oshakati, there were a number of accidents on that road because it's a very straight road, long road, people falling asleep over traveling long distances or hitting cattle. and a lot of incidents and a number of casualties on that road, with road incidents of kwefuels or buffels or samels or unimogs turning over and having accidents and etc. So we were responsible for that in that immediate area. And the last thing, also with the local populace that was staying, if there were any incidents with the local populace where there were fights that broke out and they were heavily injured or injured, as such, I remember one evening we had to go out to about 3-4 kilometers to a local cooker shop. What do you call that? Informal pub.
Yes, I would call it 7-Eleven, a local 7-Eleven.
Where a woman and a husband had an argument. I think it was about another woman, and she basically took an assegai and put it through him. And when I came there, it was so those type of incidents we also.
And was he killed?
Yes, no, absolutely. He was impaled. Yeah. So these type of incidents happened all the time, and from a medical point of view, that is what our obligations were as well. And then I do recall the Rossing Mining Foundation. They were also educating the local populace with mining and etc. And there were incidents with snakes and other incidents which they also asked us for assistance, which we helped. So it was also quite a lot of com-ops.
Yes.
And helping the local populace, other than just the war.
Yes.
So from that point of view, other duties. Duties.
Can you just hold there a second? I just want to clarify for the listeners now. Mark mentioned the Ovambo people, and this area of Southwest Africa, now Namibia in the northern part, is called Ovambo land, and the Ovambo people live in that area. And to the north of them, you have the Kwanyama people. And during the carving up of Africa in the late 1800s, they put a border between the Kuneni River straight east towards Katima Malilo, and they divided the Kwanyama people up in half. So half of them were in Angola and half of them were in Southwest, and that was one of the reasons that the Southwest African People Organization started. Mark also mentioned a whole lot of funny names like a kwefuel and a buffel and a unimog and so on, and those were military vehicles. All of them were armored piercing except the Unimog, which is a German 4x4 vehicle that was very popular with the South Africans at that time. And so these are just terms that were used ad hoc. And once you're in the military and you're young, you learn all these terms and you just think, they're acronyms and everybody will understand them, but it's not always the case. So I just wanted to clarify for the listeners. And then Mark was going to elaborate more on other tasks.
2 incidents. I shouldn't. Our time's running out. 2 incidents on a medical tent I think are worth noting. Just to give an idea of what we were facing. The medical tent. We are talking handling this medical tent that was put out in the.
Can we just ask Mark quickly now? How big is this tent that you're talking about?
We are talking.
5 meter by 5 meter?
No, a little bit larger, probably so about a 10 by 10 meter tent,
10 by 5.
Yeah, which we almost partitioned slightly, because yes. One was examination room and one was whatever, So we did everything, as Peter says. One day a gentleman came and he was suffering from high blood pressure, and because the people sometimes took 3-4 days of walking to get to our tent, it wasn't only people that were coming in after a 15-minute walk or 20-minute walk from a village. Some were walking 2-3-4 days, and sometimes the family was walking with the elderly man of the village or whatever to come to see us. So we were there for providing an incredible service to the population. And after much time examining this gentleman, he had high blood pressure, and so we gave him meds, and we would give him meds for maybe at least a month minimum. Say the blood pressure tablets were 4 tablets a day for 30 days, and 120 tablets, and we would put them in a packet and explain to him with the translator that this is what he had to have, and make his wife understand and everything, and he would thank us greatly, and off he'd go. And I recall this gentleman was walking for four odd days or 3 days to get to us, and that meant he was walking a week to there and back. So I actually ended up giving him 2 or 3 months supply, I can't recall, of the blood pressure tablets. Needless to say, the next morning when I opened the tent again, he was standing in the row, and he had taken all his tablets diligently. All of them. Diligently.
I'm sure his blood pressure had come down quite radically.
All 2 or 3 months supply diligently.
Yeah.
And I was looking at this walking wonder, wondering how he was still walking to come and see me. But these are the challenges that we had. We had one tree next to the last incident. We had one tree next to the medical tent, and you must understand, we were working under temperatures where it was sometimes over 45 degrees Celsius, and under a tarpaulin tent, the heat just gets absolutely stifling hot, and it's incredible conditions that we're working with, and to think clearly in that environment. So a lot of time was taken with the history of the patient and diagnosing the patient and dispensing the proper meds, and it was a huge amount of meds that we were dispensing. And after, I recall one day after 3 hours, 4 hours, we closed up and etc. And as I was walking from the tent back to the base, because we were outside the base, I walked past the tree and everybody was sitting there, and one lady was swapping one blue tablet for 3 yellow ones from another lady, and this lady was swapping a yellow or 2 yellow ones for 10 white tablets, and they were swappping it like beads, the different meds, and I just looked up at the sky and I said, somebody help me here,
So it was almost like kids in a kindergarten changing Smarties, and I prefer the green ones or the blue ones or whichever. Yeah.
So these are the things that happen. These are the sometimes maybe more lighter things that happen, but there were also very serious incidents and sad incidents and the very serious cases that we could not treat out there. We actually sent them up to Ondangwa or Shakati. Okay. They took one of their own transports, and they took the patient up. The family took them up. So from a medical point of view, that was one thing.
You mentioned the word ComOps, which actually means communication operations. Now, these people that came to you and you dispensed tablets to and so on, did they have to pay for the service?
No, nobody paid. It was all provided by the South African Defence Force, free of charge. Okay. And as I say, it was first class meds. Yes. They were all the meds were from Europe, supplied from Europe and etc. Okay. And it was exactly what we were able to purchase in our pharmacies in South Africa. Okay. That was being dispensed to the local.
Was there any particular reason the South Africans were doing this? Were they interrogating them for information, or was there any ulterior motive?
No, from our side, no. I must say, from the medical standpoint, no. There was no instructions given to us for interrogation. It was purely a service. I think it was to win the hearts and minds of the local populace, and I think that was the aim. First and foremost, to assist the people, to be there for the people, to provide a service. You would know more about that.
Yes. No, I just want to make it clear for the viewer, because when military operations, they always think that there's an ulterior motive, or there's a reason. So, what other bases of One SWA reconnaissance did you go to? Because we were dotted over a large expanse of Southwest Africa.
Yeah, so my other duties, other than the medical duties, the One SWA unit was in Meershoek was very easygoing. It was there were no parades in the morning or anything like that, or military drills or anything. So it was very, very easy, and it was teamwork at the end of the day. So I was instructed. Did you instruct me? I was
Yeah,
instructed.
well, I think that's very tactfully put, because in the military you normally give orders,
Yes.
but in a special forces unit you actually get motivated to do certain
Well,
tasks.
that's exactly.
And you halfway you volunteer for
Yes,
jobs. You know,
yeah.
you say I'm available to do whatever is
Yeah.
necessary to be done. You know.
Now, part of the ops medic course, we did a driver's course as part of that. We got the military driver's vehicle to drive all the vehicles that we mentioned earlier, like the Samel and the Rinkels and the Kweful and all those. So I volunteered on many occasions to drive up from Meersoop to O'Mahony base.
And what distance is that approximately?
Oh, no, Peter, you would know.
It was a good 600 kilometers.
Yes,
and,
one way.
One way.
Yes.
So I
Correct.
just wanted to explain something to you, just so that you get context here, is that this area is north of the Red Line, which is an operational area. You were entitled to danger pay, and I can't remember, it was 12 Rand a day or something you got for danger and inconvenience and that kind of thing. And that's not a lot of money if you think you're going to get shot and been put in a body bag and sent home. But it was some stipend to assist you. And so those roads had to be swept every morning by the engineers before you could travel on them. So it wasn't like being in South Africa now where you just get in your car and you drive 600 kilometers. And that 600 kilometers will take you the entire day, because you'd be waiting for people to sweep the road. And once it's swept, you only had 4 or 5 hours to be able to use the road, because then you'd have to wait until the next morning when they swept the road again. It was also, when you went up from north of Grootfontein towards Rundi, it was a tsetse-fly area, so the vehicles had to be stopped and sprayed for tsetse-fly and foot and mouth disease. Some of the roads were tar roads. Going up to Ondangwa past Meersoop was a tar road. Then from Grootfontein to Rundu was a tar road. But the 250 kilometers between Rundu west towards O'Mahony was a gravel road, and you couldn't travel more than 60 kilometers an hour on that road. And obviously you were using armored vehicles in case there were landmines.
No, yeah, we weren't. I wasn't.
You weren't.
No,
using,
we were using the Toyota single cab.
Yes,
single cab Toyota with the gear shift lever.
That's it.
Yes,
the old type.
Yeah.
And so these were just little trips where you'd jump onto a convoy and you just tag along. And
or on my on my own. Yes, no convoy. Yeah.
So it was not just like going on a quick holiday trip. These were quite hair-raising trips that had to be done. And a lot of them were just for logistic stuffs, where we had a lot of ammunition and equipment in O'Mahony that we would need for an operation. So then Mark would be coerced into going up and fetching equipment or something in these other bases, which is quite a big responsibility, because normally we would get an officer to be able to do that and give him 2-3 people, and you'd be given an order to say what the convoy must be, what you must do, and everything. And being a special forces unit, you just casually called the guy to the tea room and said, look, tomorrow morning we need you to go the 600 kilometers there, spend a day or two there, and then come back with a list of equipment.
I recall that stopping at 1 or 2 bases in Oshakati and Ondangwa, when we entered formal bases, many times at the base you would be asked for your formal
race facer, which is your route form, saying you're traveling from one place
which was
to the next.
signed off, and we never had that.
Yes.
We didn't have that, and so when we got to the base and they asked us, we said we were from one Swar reconnaissance regiment. Just let us through. So that is how informal it was, So. And then I was obviously also sent to collect people that were supposed to come to the base from Ondangwa when they flew in.
So we had guests and we had family members that used to fly into the operational area. And us being a very small unit, the operational staff couldn't be used to move people around and do mundane tasks. So a lot of those tasks were left to people like Mark, who was the acting base commander, come medic, come, go do this and do that.
Yeah.
And on many occasions, because of something he mentioned before, that we thought that he was a virgin, that we would trust him with our girlfriends to go and pick them up. Because some of these guys, you trust them in the bush with your life, you know what I mean? But you
But not with your
definitely wouldn't
girlfriend.
trust him with your girlfriend, you know. So it was a very sensitive task that we only chose certain people to do.
Thank you, Peter.
And I think you did that a couple of times
Yes,
for
I
me
did.
to go and
Yes,
pick up
yes,
my
yes, yeah.
fiance at that time, yes.
This can be edited, I know, but there was another base.
We don't edit, this is raw footage, we keep it just
no,
like it is.
There was another base that I had to go, which was south of Oshabelu.
You went to Omaruru.
Omaruru, there we go,
Omaruru.
that's correct. Yes,
And Omaruru was a good
also.
300 kilometers
Yes, I
south.
also went to Omaruru.
But it was a bit safer because it was out of the red zone. And Omaruru is a very weird base because we lived in the town of Omaruru, a small town of maybe 2,000 people in total. And then 18 kilometers from there was Kransberg mine.
Yes, correct.
And it was a lovely, idyllic mine set. It was a tungsten mine. And it was set in the mountains and it had been mined out. And they had the typical mining town with swimming pool and bowling greens and a mess hall and, you know, and lots of water so we could use for green grass. And so it was like a little holiday resort actually. And I know you did go down there a few times as well.
Yes.
But Mark's main tasking was actually to be the acting base commander and the medical orderly at the base itself. And after the doctor left, we didn't get another doctor to come in.
No, there was no more doctor.
There was no more doctor there.
It was actually interesting because in the transition between 101 Romeo Mike and 1 SWA getting to the base, it was a number of weeks. And there were clearly food orders placed for the bases. And once a month, you would drive up and go and collect your food order. And I recall that month there was no food order provided for Meerswip. I remember, and I drove up to go, and they said there was no order. They couldn't assist me. So, but the quartermaster of the food, I remember him still packing in for me. He said, "Look, we don't have anything. How many guys are on the base?" And he gave me 2 big blocks of cheese and a big piece. I can't remember, it was bacon or something, and a number of tins of something, and he just loaded in canned peaches and baked beans, and that was it. And when I got back, we had a walk in the middle of the base. We had the pub.
Yes.
Come mess,
Yes.
which was a command, and then we had the walk-in fridge,
Yes.
Which wasn't operational all the time, but it was the coolest place, and we put all that in. So I recall for a month eating only bacon, peaches, and cheese. I recall that, yes. Yeah.
And I take you, but you didn't sign for that stuff either. It was
No,
just
he
given
didn't
to-
ask me to sign for it. He just
said,
loaded it into the
felt
vehicle.
sorry for you.
And he said, "That's fine. You know, we'll make sure that next month you guys get food. How many are in the base next month?" Yeah.
And I'm sure that after that, you guys made sure that your food order was in timely and that you got your food.
Another thing about the base is from the walls, there was a clearing of about 150 meters of bush around the base. So every morning with sun up and every evening with sun down, everybody would move from the base towards the walls and stand, what do you call it?
Stand to.
Stand to. And everybody, barring none, had to do that. We had a big challenge with spitting cobras, rinkhouses, that were living in the wall. And many a night and day, I had the medical tent happened to be almost central in the camp, and I had incidents because we had 4 in the corners, 4 little bunkers with the machine, the mags, and many times the guys were spat and they were running. They would start running, and I would hear them. They would start medic, you know, as they're running, and then halfway they can't run anymore because the eyes are burning so much, and then he's standing in the middle with his eyes. They're trying to get rid of the pain, yeah, and then into the sick bay and rinse it out with Ringer's lactate, which is a drip, or the fluid in a drip, and so we had many incidents like that. Yeah, I'm just trying to recall. There were a number. Oh yes, when it was real summer, the local populous cattle didn't have water, and we had a little swimming pool that was made in the middle of the base. And the cattle would smell the water, and they would come into the base, and they would come and drink from the swimming pool. And the problem with that was that the swimming pool had rounded edges, the concrete was just handcrafted round, and the hooves would slip, and the cow would end up in the swimming pool. Yeah. And to get a cow out of a swimming pool, first of all, all the water has to be taken out, because the cow is panicking and leaking from everywhere, and so you have to and it takes 3-4 days to refill the swimming pool because of the borehole, which is pumping so slowly. So we almost had every day somebody on duty on a tube with a shotgun and loaded with soap. Took the slugs out, loaded with soap, and his duty was to lie suntanning with the soap, and generally just shoot into the air or something to scare the animals away. So these are just small incidents that
stories about daily life on the border, on the operational area. Tell us your experience that you had now with One SWAR Reconnaissance and your national service being a medic. Did it help you later in life, and did the circumstances, the hardships you had, did it have an influence on your life, the rest of your career?
I grew up with my mom was German, and so very strict, rigid upbringing, and then went to a school at Paul Roos, was in a hostel, so there was a lot of there were rules and regulations, obviously, but going into the military. And I think for myself, doing the Ops Medic course gave me a huge amount of confidence and self-belief. But I think being part of the Southwest African Reconnaissance Regiment and the way that everybody did business, there was very little formalities, but everybody just got on and respected each other and did their work. So even though it was very informal, it was incredibly efficient. The machine was efficient. Everybody knew their tasks and handled their tasks with efficiency, as simple as that. And that, I think a combination of doing the ops and being in that environment and etc. gave me an incredible amount of confidence and self-belief. And there's no question, if I had to do the journey again, would definitely do it. No question. No.
We're going to conclude this interview now, and thank you for watching this program. And we'll come back with Mark at a later stage. Mark, thank you very much for your service.
Thank you, Peter. Appreciate it.
Lovely.